I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Syria. What does it mean when al-Qaeda dismisses an al-Qaeda franchise? Another head-spinning moment in Syria this week. The leader of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, put out a statement that said he no longer recognized the Islamic State of Iraq and Sham as being part of his organization. That's right. The group, which quite often is misleadingly called al-Qaeda in Iraq, which has been challenging the al-Maliki government in Iraq for some years, and over the last 18 months has been increasingly prominent inside Syria, had been dismissed. The media, which has already had problems, now had a new challenge. You see, they had gotten to the point where they could at least accept that ISIS was like extreme al-Qaeda, whereas another Islamist faction like Jabhat al-Nusra was moderate al-Qaeda. But now extreme al-Qaeda had been denounced by al-Qaeda Central. Did this mean that al-Qaeda Central, like al-Zawahiri, were actually moderates? And that ISIS, well, like they were even too terrifying, too brutal for the group that had been founded by Osama bin Laden? Okay, it sounds confusing, and it's unnecessarily so. It's unnecessarily so because it all pivots on that notion of al-Qaeda. Let's get down to a story which doesn't look from the top down, but from the bottom up. The fact of the matter is that the Islamic State of Iraq and as-Sham has been on a power grab. They have, since last spring, tried to get more political, military, and social influence in northern and eastern Syria. To get that influence, they have been challenging not really the Assad regime, but other insurgent groups. Indeed, for the last month, they've been in open warfare with some of those insurgents, say like the Islamic Front Bloc. But since last April, ISIS has also been fighting with that supposed other al-Qaeda affiliate, Jabhat al-Nusra. You see, the ISIS leader, al-Baghdadi, put out a statement that said, "We are the people who are basically running the show in Syria for al-Qaeda. We are the people to whom everyone should owe local allegiance." Jabhat al-Nusra came back and said, "No, they shouldn't. You're made up of foreign fighters. You're coming from outside. We, Jabhat al-Nusra, we work with the local Syrian groups. We work with the clerics, the businessmen, the activists." Jabhat al-Nusra not only said this, but a month later, they got an endorsement from none other than Ayman al-Zawahiri, who, far from saying, "I'm al-Qaeda, I'm going to come in and take control of everything," said, "Jabhat al-Nusra represents the organization, or should be allowed to represent the organization inside Syria. It should be a local decision." Last week, al-Zawahiri said the same thing. Jabhat al-Nusra is to be preferred because the local people have shown their support for it. That rejection of ISIS, in other words, is not just simply some type of al-Qaeda versus al-Qaeda franchise. What it's saying is that the fight inside Syria is one which turns upon local insurgency, local protest, and the fight against the Assad regime. This isn't the first time we said it. Last April, Joanna Proshchuk wrote for EA in a very key analysis at the very start of the fight between ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra that al-Qaeda was a distraction from looking at what matters in Syria. What matters in Syria is that Jabhat al-Nusra is working with other insurgents, non-al-Qaeda insurgents. Some of those insurgents are Islamist, some of them are secular groups. Those groups are working together because they have a common goal, and that is they think that President Bashar al-Assad should leave power. They do disagree on other issues, but that common goal has meant they have reached accommodation on other points. For example, rebuilding local areas through Sharia courts, through local councils. This doesn't mean that there won't be battles and that there won't be disputes over how to interpret the law, how to interpret social behavior. But simply saying that Syria is a matter of al-Qaeda franchises, you pick it, some version of al-Qaeda Burger King, al-Qaeda McDonald's, al-Qaeda KFC, versus the regime with some type of moderate insurgency stuck in between, well, it's just guaranteed to give you more head spinning and more distractions. The fight is on the ground, and al-Qaeda is off to the side, not at the center of it. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Syria.